The galaxy had long whispered tales of Seraphine Valtor, heiress of the Valtor Dominion, a civilization that spanned the spiral arms of the Epsilon sector. Seraphine was a legend not for her beauty or her intellect alone, but for her daring streak, an intoxicating blend of recklessness and charm. She was the kind of leader who could command fleets with a smile or crush planetary uprisings with a glance. No one, however, truly knew her heart until the day she gambled it away. It all began on the verdant world of Calith Prime, a planet known for hosting the galaxy's most exclusive gaming conclaves. Here, amidst crystal towers and floating casinos, the elite congregated to wager fortunes that could destabilize governments. Seraphine had not come as a visitor. She had come with a singular purpose: to indulge her curiosity in one of the oldest human traditions, gambling. The casino was a towering structure of chrome and light, suspended above the glowing surface by anti-gravitic pylons. Seraphine moved through it like a predator through a rainforest. Her attire, a flowing gown woven from the silk of cryo-spiders, shimmered with every motion. Patrons parted instinctively, aware that the presence of a Valtor carried weight beyond mere courtesy. At the far end of the hall, seated at a hollow poker table, was a human who seemed entirely unremarkable. His name was Elias Kane. To the galaxy, he was a low-ranking envoy from Earth, known mostly for his diplomatic blunders and occasional acts of audacious luck. To Seraphine, he appeared almost laughable, a human, and one who dared sit at the table where fortunes could vanish with a single card. Seraphine, amused and intrigued, accepted the challenge. "High stakes," she said, her voice smooth like liquid starlight. "Winner chooses a prize, anything in their power." Elias raised an eyebrow, unfazed by her reputation or the legendary stories surrounding her. "Deal," he said simply. The game lasted hours. Holographic cards floated and shimmered, displaying impossible mathematics and probabilities that would have made lesser minds explode. Seraphine played with skill, intuition, and the faintest trace of arrogance. Elias countered with patience, timing, and a mysterious streak of luck that seemed almost preternatural. In the end, it came down to one final hand. Seraphine's eyes gleamed with calculated confidence, while Elias' expression remained neutral, unreadable. The last card was drawn. Seraphine's hand, perfect in every sense, lost. "Your prize," Elias said, leaning back casually, "is me." The room fell silent. A murmur swept through the assembled elites. No one in the galaxy had ever seen a human win against Seraphine Valtor, and no one had ever dared propose such a wager. "You marry me?" she asked, a laugh hidden behind the curve of her lips. "Only if you accept," he replied. And so it began. Seraphine, the unflinching heir to a galactic empire, was wed to Elias Kane, an unremarkable human by every measurable standard. The galaxy was shocked. Messages of disbelief, mockery, and incredulity echoed across sectors. Some called it folly. Others whispered it was a strategic move she hadn't yet revealed. Even her closest advisors were dumbfounded. The early days. The first weeks of their union were challenging. Seraphine was accustomed to command and dominance. Elias had no fleet under his control, no armies, no planets. Yet he possessed something else, something the galaxy rarely recognized in humans: resilience. He did not seek to impress her with power or wealth. Instead, he learned her routines, anticipated her moods, and offered insights that were always grounded, often startlingly accurate, and sometimes, against all odds, brilliant. Seraphine, at first, found his simplicity irritating. One evening, as they hovered above her private observatory orbiting Valtor Prime, she remarked, I married you thinking it would be a game. I didn't expect strategy." Elias sipped his tea, unbothered by the enormity of the empire sprawled beneath them. "Strategy isn't always about fleets or weapons," he said. "Sometimes it's about knowing when to wait, when to speak, and when to act." It was a phrase that would echo through Seraphine's mind for years. The test. Their union was soon tested. A rival faction, the Korath Syndicate, sought to exploit the supposed weakness of Seraphine's marriage. They launched a coordinated assault on the outer colonies of the Valtor Dominion, expecting that Seraphine would hesitate to deploy full force for fear of risking Elias. Seraphine, of course, hesitated. Not out of weakness, but because she understood Elias' influence. He had taught her that restraint was as much a weapon as any fleet. For the first time in decades, she listened, not commanded. Elias, in turn, devised a plan that combined diplomacy, subterfuge, and unconventional tactics. Using the very unpredictability of human intuition, he suggested that the Valtor fleet simulate a retreat, luring the Korath forces into an ambush. The plan worked perfectly. The Korath were defeated, their fleet shattered, and Seraphine's reputation as an unassailable leader remained intact. But more than that, the galaxy saw, for the first time, that a human unarmed, without fleets or power, could influence events on a scale that many of the most advanced civilizations could not. A growing legend. Years passed. The marriage that the galaxy had mocked became a symbol of a new paradigm. Seraphine and Elias ruled not as a traditional emperor and consort, but as partners, each amplifying the strengths of the other. Elias' reputation grew. He negotiated treaties that had previously been considered impossible. He introduced Earth's unique approaches to problem-solving, humor, and creativity into interstellar governance. Under his influence, the Valtor Dominion flourished like never before. Seraphine, for her part, found herself transformed. The thrill of gambling that had once defined her life became something else entirely. The thrill of discovery, of learning from a partner who was unpredictable yet astonishingly competent. The galaxy, initially skeptical, began to take note. Humans were no longer dismissed as primitive or irrelevant. They were cunning, resilient, and capable of shaping events on an interstellar scale. And it all began with Elias Kane, one human who had won a gamble no one expected. The challenge of the ancients then came the most formidable test of all. Deep in the Epsilon sector, hidden within the nebula of Star Song, lay the ruins of the ancients, a civilization long extinct but whose technology was said to surpass even the Valtor Dominion. Legends claimed that any who entered without understanding the ancients' logic would be destroyed. Seraphine, ever curious, wished to investigate. Elias, naturally, insisted on accompanying her. Many advisors protested, citing the danger of exposing the Dominion's heir and consort to unknown perils. But Seraphine would not be deterred. The ruins were labyrinthine, full of traps, illusions, and enigmas. Machines older than the stars themselves pulsed with energy that bent reality. Valtor scientists had long failed to decipher their purpose. Yet Elias approached each challenge with human intuition, a combination of creativity, instinct, and sheer stubbornness. He touched a console that pulsed with a golden light, and instead of setting off a trap, it activated a holographic map revealing the entire ruins complex. He solved a sequence of locks with methods no alien civilization would have conceived, drawing upon logic that was paradoxically simple yet effective. Seraphine watched, astonished. Time and again, the ruins seemed to test them, and time and again, Elias' human ingenuity turned potential catastrophe into triumph. By the time they emerged, the galaxy had a new story to tell. Not only had Seraphine, the Valtor heiress, ventured into the ruins of the ancients, but she had done so alongside a human who had solved riddles older than the Dominion itself. The legacy decades later, Seraphine and Elias stood together on the observation deck of Valtor Prime, watching the glow of 1,000 worlds under their governance. The galaxy had changed profoundly. Humans were now respected, even revered, not for their technology, which was often inferior, but for their capacity to adapt, to persevere, and to innovate in ways that no empire had predicted. Seraphine turned to Elias. "Do you remember that night in the casino?" she asked, a playful glint in her eyes. "When I thought I could gamble with you and win?" Elias smiled, his eyes reflecting the light of distant stars. "I do. And I also remember thinking that winning you was a gamble worth taking." She laughed, a sound that resonated across the observation deck, a mixture of relief, love, and admiration. "You've shocked the galaxy, Elias. Not with fleets or firepower, but with yourself." He shrugged modestly. "Sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the one you hold, it's the one you become." And so, the legend endured. Seraphine Valtor, who gambled and lost, became the partner of a human who changed the destiny of civilizations. The galaxy learned an invaluable lesson: never underestimate a human and never gamble against the unpredictable. From that day forward, stories of Seraphine and Elias were told in every starport, every academy, every council chamber. They were a reminder that courage, intuition, and a willingness to embrace the unknown could triumph where technology and might alone could not. In a universe defined by empires, war, and ambition, a human had risen, not to conquer, but to inspire. And the galaxy would never forget the human she married, the gamble she lost, and the legend they forged together. Decades later, Seraphine and Elias stood together on the observation deck of Valtor Prime, watching the glow of 1,000 worlds under their governance. The galaxy had changed profoundly. Humans were now respected, even revered, not for their technology, which often lagged behind the ancients or the Valtor, but for their capacity to adapt, persevere, and innovate in ways no empire had anticipated. Seraphine turned to Elias. "Do you remember that night in the casino?" she asked, a playful glint in her eyes. "When I thought I could gamble with you and win?" Elias smiled, his eyes reflecting the light of distant stars. "I do. And I also remember thinking that winning you was a gamble worth taking." She laughed, a sound that resonated across the observation deck, a mixture of relief, love, and admiration. "You've shocked the galaxy, Elias. Not with fleets or firepower, but with yourself." He shrugged modestly. "Sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the one you hold, it's the one you become." The galaxy itself seemed to acknowledge it. Humans were no longer dismissed as primitive or inconsequential. Across countless worlds, human ingenuity, courage, and resilience became a model to emulate. Young commanders studied Elias' strategies, diplomats copied his methods, historians chronicled his ingenuity alongside the Valtor legacy. Seraphine watched him, realizing that the man she had once considered unremarkable had reshaped the fate of empires. He had turned her life and the galaxy inside out without firing a single shot. In that moment, she understood something profound. She had not lost a gamble. She had gained a partner, a force of nature that no starship, no weapon, and no political maneuver could ever match. Together, they had transformed the destiny of civilizations, proving that the galaxy's greatest victories often came from the most unexpected places. Years later, as Seraphine's hair silvered and Elias' frame grew slower, legend still spoke of the human who walked alongside the Valtor heiress. Statues of their figures stood in capitals across the sector, not as symbols of power, but of unity, insight, and courage. Children learned their story in schools. Scholars debated their strategies in universities. Even the most stubborn generals admitted, grudgingly, that humans could sometimes outthink machines, aliens, and empires alike. And when asked what it had all meant, Seraphine would simply smile and say, "I gambled and I lost. But what I gained was the most extraordinary prize the galaxy has ever known." Elias, always humble, would respond, "We didn't just win. Together, we reminded the universe what it means to be human." The stars themselves seemed to twinkle in approval, and the galaxy remembered the human she married, the one she had gambled for, and the one who, without intending to, reshaped everything. And so, the legend endured. Seraphine Valtor, who once gambled with her heart, had lost, but in losing, she had discovered the infinite potential of humanity. A human, unassuming yet brilliant, had risen, not to conquer, but to inspire. And the galaxy would never forget it.